Zara's latex-gloved hands were buried deep inside a man's chest cavity when the cold steel of a gun barrel pressed against her temple. The metal bit into her skin, a freezing contrast to the hot, sticky blood coating her fingers. "If he dies," a voice growled from her left, the English broken and thick with panic, "you die." Simple. She didn't look up. She couldn't. One flinch, one microscopic tremor in her fingers, and the artery she was trying to clamp would burst. If that happened, the man on the table would be dead before his body even hit the floor. The basement clinic smelled like bleach, rust, and rain. Above them, a storm was hammering against the pavement of Seoul, but down here, the only sound that mattered was the erratic, thumping rhythm of the heart monitor. "Get the gun out of my face," Zara said. Her voice surprised her. It was steady. It was the voice of a surgeon, not the terrified student drowning in debt who had taken this illegal job just to keep the lights on. "I said move it. No. Or you can explain to your boss why you shot the only person in this city who can save him." The pressure on her temple held for a second, agonizingly long, before it eased off. The man in the suit stepped back, muttering a curse in Korean. Zara took a breath. Just one. Then she went back to work. The man on the table was a ruin. 3 bullet wounds. One through the shoulder, one grazing the hip, and the worst one, the one currently trying to kill him, just below the ribs. He was built like a tank, his chest rising and falling in shallow, ragged gasps. Even pale from blood loss, his skin had a golden undertone, and his body was a canvas of ink. Dragons, tigers, waves of black and gray crashing over old scar tissue. This wasn't a street thug. This was royalty. "Scalpel," she ordered. No one moved. She snapped her head up, glaring at the terrified nurse the gang had dragged out of bed. "Scalpel. Give it to me." The nurse fumbled, slapping the metal into Zara's palm. She worked fast. She had to. The patient's eyes were fluttering open. That wasn't good. He shouldn't be awake. The anesthesia in a place like this was cheap, diluted, and unreliable. Suddenly, a hand shot out. It was him. The patient. His fingers, stained with his own blood, wrapped around Zara's wrist with a grip that felt like iron. It was strong enough to bruise. She froze, the scalpel hovering inches from his skin. His eyes opened fully. They were dark. Pitch black. There was no fear in them, only a hazy, drug-fueled intensity that pinned her to the spot. He wasn't looking at the ceiling. He was looking right at her. He was watching her cut into him. "Let go," she hissed, trying to shake him off without tearing the suture. "You're bleeding out. Let go." He didn't blink. His lips moved, barely a whisper, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a shout. "Don't. Let me. I'm trying not to," she snapped, adrenaline flooding her system. "But you're making it hard." He stared for another second, his gaze dropping to her lips, then back to her eyes, before his hand went limp and fell back onto the table. He was out again. Zara worked for another 2 hours. Her back screamed. Her feet throbbed in her cheap sneakers. She stitched muscle. She cauterized veins. She cleaned wounds that would have killed a lesser man. When she finally stripped off the bloody gloves and dropped them into the metal bin, the silence in the room was heavy. The lieutenant, the one with the gun, stepped forward. He looked at the monitor. Steady beep. Strong pulse. "He lives?" he asked. "He lives," Zara said, leaning against the counter, exhaustion hitting her like a truck. "But he needs rest. Don't move him for at least 12 hours. If he tears those stitches, I'm not coming back to fix him." The lieutenant nodded, looking at her with a new expression. It wasn't respect exactly. It was value, like she was a useful tool they had just discovered. "You stay. Watch him. Until he wakes." "That wasn't the deal," Zara argued, grabbing her coat. "I did the surgery. I want my money and I want to go home." "You stay," he repeated, his hand drifting toward the bulge of a weapon in his jacket pocket. Zara stayed. She sat in the corner of the recovery room, which was just a back office with a leather couch, watching the dragon sleep. The storm outside had passed, leaving a strange quiet over the city. She checked his vitals every 20 minutes. He was healing fast. Unnaturally fast. Around 3 a.m., the door opened. The lieutenant threw a thick envelope onto the desk near her. Cash. More than she made in 6 months at the university hospital. Then he left, closing the door with a click. She reached for the envelope, but a sound from the couch stopped her. Rustling fabric. A groan. She turned. He was sitting up. "You shouldn't be moving," she said, rushing over. "Lie down. You'll rip the sutures." He ignored her. He swung his legs over the edge of the couch, wincing slightly, his hand going to the bandage on his side. He looked at her. Really looked at her this time. The drugs were wearing off, leaving him sharp and dangerous. "Who are you?" His voice was gravel, deep, resonating in the small room. "The doctor who just saved your life," Zara said, crossing her arms to hide the fact that her hands were shaking. Now that the adrenaline of the surgery was gone, the reality of who he was and where she was setting in. "You're welcome." He chuckled. It was a dark, dry sound. He motioned with his hand. "Come here." "I'm fine here." "Come here." It wasn't a request. She took 2 steps forward, stopping just out of arm's reach. He studied her. He looked at the dark skin of her hands, the curls escaping her scrub cap, the oversized university hoodie she wore over her scrubs. "You are not local," he said. "I'm a resident at Seoul National," she said defensively. "I'm working." "Illegal work," he pointed out. He leaned back, his head resting against the wall, eyes half-lidded. "You have steady hands." I felt them inside me. The way he said it made the air in the room grow hot. It wasn't clinical. It was intimate. "You were hallucinating," she said, her voice tight. "I never hallucinate," he murmured. He reached out again, and this time she didn't pull away fast enough. He caught her hand. His skin was burning up, a low-grade fever from the trauma, but his grip was possessive. He pulled her closer. She stumbled, her knees hitting the edge of the couch. They were inches apart. She could smell the antiseptic soap she had used on him, mixed with the expensive cologne that clung to his torn shirt and the metallic scent of danger. "Why did you save me?" he asked softly. His thumb traced the pulse point on her wrist. He must have felt it hammering like a trapped bird. "It's my job," she whispered. "No," he shook his head. "Down here. In the gutter. Nobody does their job. They do what they are paid to do. Or what they are forced to do. You." He tugged her down until their faces were level. "You fought for me. I heard you yelling at my men. They were going to let you die. And you decided I was worth saving?" "I took an oath," she said, trying to sound professional, but her breath hitched as his hand moved up her arm, resting on the back of her neck. His fingers tangled in the small hairs at the nape of her neck. "I don't care about your oath," he said. His eyes dropped to her lips. "You saved the devil tonight, doctor. You know what that means?" "What?" "It means the devil owes you." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It tasted like violence and desperation in life. It was the kind of kiss that happens when 2 people have just brushed against death and need to prove they are still alive. She should have pushed him away. She should have slapped him, grabbed her money, and ran out the door. She was a good girl. She went to church on Sundays. She studied 18 hours a day. She didn't kiss gangsters in basement clinics. But she didn't push him away. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the adrenaline crash. Maybe it was the way he touched her, like she was something fragile and precious, even while he was devouring her. She melted into him. The night blurred. It was messy and heated and frantic. He moved with a hunger that terrified her, yet he was careful of his own wounds, and surprisingly, careful with her. He didn't ask if it was her first time. He didn't ask anything. He just took. And God help her, she gave. When she woke up, the room was cold. She sat up, clutching the thin blanket to her chest. The leather couch was empty. "Hello?" she called out. Silence. She looked around. The door was unlocked. The medical equipment was packed away. On the small metal table where her bag sat, there was the envelope of cash, and next to it a single business card. Purely black, with a golden dragon emblem embossed on it. No name. No number. A wave of nausea washed over her that had nothing to do with illness. Shame burned hot and prickly on her skin. She looked at the blood-stained bandages in the trash bin. She looked at the money. He was gone. He treated it like a transaction. She saved him, they did that. And he paid her. Stupid, she whispered to herself, tears pricking her eyes. So stupid, Zara. She grabbed the money. Because she needed it, she desperately needed it for tuition, and she ran. She ran out of that clinic into the early morning drizzle of Itaewon, and she didn't look back. She scrubbed her skin raw in the shower for an hour, trying to wash the scent of him off her. She told herself it was a one-time thing. A mistake born of trauma. She would never see him again. If you're enjoying the story so far and want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what happens when the past comes back to haunt her. And trust me, it's coming back. 3 months later, the fluorescent lights of the hospital bathroom were unflinching. They showed every dark circle under Zara's eyes, every pore, every line of exhaustion etched into her face. She gripped the porcelain sink, waiting for the room to stop spinning. She had just thrown up for the 3rd time this shift. Her stomach felt like it was tied in knots. Dr. Williams? A nurse knocked on the door. Dr. Park is asking for you in Trauma 1. Coming, she choked out. She splashed cold water on her face, staring at her reflection. She looked tired, but more than that, she looked different. Her skin was glowing in a way that wasn't just sweat. Her chest hurt, and her period was 9 weeks late. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small white stick she had bought from a pharmacy 3 neighborhoods away. She had taken the test 10 minutes ago. She hadn't looked at it yet. She was too scared. She took a deep breath, squeezed her eyes shut, and flipped it over. 2 pink lines. The world dropped out from under her. She slumped against the tiled wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. Pregnant. She was a resident on a visa. She was barely making rent. She had no family in Korea. And the father was a ghost. A criminal. A man whose name she didn't even know. A man who had left her cash on a table like she was a hooker. No, she whispered, clutching her stomach. No, no, no. She couldn't have this baby. She couldn't raise a child in this chaos. She had to finish her residency. She had to go back to America. But as her hand rested on her stomach, a strange, terrifying warmth spread through her. A tiny spark of life. His life. She stood up, shaking. She wrapped the test in paper towels and buried it deep in the trash can. She needed to think. She needed a plan. She exited the bathroom, smoothing down her white coat. She put on her glasses, hiding her eyes. She walked out into the busy corridor of Seoul National University Hospital, trying to blend in, trying to be invisible. But she wasn't invisible. As she walked toward the trauma center, she felt it. That prickle on the back of her neck. The feeling of being watched. She slowed down. The hospital was crowded. Patients, doctors, visitors. But the atmosphere felt different. Heavier. She turned the corner toward the nurse's station and froze. Standing there, leaning against the counter with a casual arrogance that sucked the air out of the hallway, was a man in a long black trench coat. He was flanked by 2 other men in suits, big men, who looked at the passing doctors with disdain. The man in the center turned. It was him. He looked different healed. He was taller than she remembered. Broader. His black hair was slicked back, sharp and severe. He wasn't pale and bleeding anymore. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. And he was looking right at her. Zara's heart stopped. He found her. How did he find her? She had worn a mask that night. She hadn't given her name. He pushed off the counter and started walking toward her. People parted for him like the Red Sea. He didn't rush. He moved with a predatory grace, his eyes locked on hers. She couldn't move. Her feet were lead. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach, shielding it beneath the loose fabric of her scrubs. He stopped 2 feet in front of her. He smelled like winter and expensive tobacco. "Doctor," he said. His voice was low, intimate, sending a shiver of terror straight down her spine. I can't help you," she stammered, looking around for security. But the security guard at the end of the hall was looking the other way, pointedly ignoring the dangerous men in the middle of the floor. "You already helped me," he said. His gaze raked over her, taking in her tired eyes, her pale face. "You saved my life. And then you disappeared." "I did my job," she whispered. "You paid me. We're even." He stepped closer. Too close. He lowered his head so his mouth was right next to her ear. "We are not even. You left before I could decide what to do with you." "Please," she hissed. "People are watching." "Let them watch," he said, pulling back to look at her face. "I have been looking for you for 90 days. I turned this city upside down. Did you think you could hide from the Jiamryong? Jiamryong, the Golden Dragon, one of the most vicious syndicates in Asia." Zara's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I have enemies," he said simply. They are poisoning my food, paying off my doctors. I cannot trust anyone." He paused, his eyes softening just a fraction, a callback to that night in the basement. "Except you. You didn't kill me when you had the chance. You are the only person in Seoul I trust with my body." He reached out and took her hand. His grip was just as warm and firm as she remembered. "I am hiring you. Exclusively. You are coming with me." "I can't," she said, trying to pull her hand back. "I have a residency. I have a life." "I bought your debt," he said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Your student loans. Your visa sponsorship. I own it all now." Her jaw dropped. You what?" "You belong to me, doctor," he said. Then his eyes dropped. They lowered from her face, down her neck, past her chest, and landed on her stomach. She was wearing baggy scrubs. There was nothing to see. She was barely showing. But he was a man who lived by noticing details. He noticed the way she was subconsciously protecting her midsection. He noticed the slight swell that shouldn't be there. His eyes narrowed. The air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. He looked back up at her face, searching for the truth. "You have gained weight," he said slowly. It wasn't an observation. It was an accusation. She couldn't breathe. "It's stress," she lied. "I've been stress eating." He didn't believe her. She saw the gears turning in his head. He did the math. 3 months. 90 days. His grip on her hand tightened, hurting her. "Who is it?" he demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "You have a man?" "No," she said quickly. "No one." "Let go of me." "Then what is inside you?" He roared. The shout echoed through the hospital hallway. Nurses stopped. Patients stared. But Joon-Ho didn't care. He looked furious. Betrayed. "Is it mine?" he asked, his voice shaking with a rage she didn't understand. I don't know what you're talking about," she cried, tears spilling over. "Please, just leave me alone." "Get the car," he barked at his men, never taking his eyes off her. "She is coming with us." "No," she shouted, backing away. "Help! Someone help me." But no one moved. They were all too afraid of the dragon in the black coat. He lunged for her. She turned to run, but she wasn't fast enough. He scooped her up, throwing her over his shoulder like a sack of flour. "Put me down," she screamed, pounding on his back. "You can't do this. This is kidnapping. This is protection," he growled, marching toward the exit. "If that is my heir you are trying to hide, you are never leaving my sight again." Zara watched the hospital doors get closer, realizing with terrifying clarity that her life as Zara Williams, ordinary student, was over. She was entering the dragon's den, and she was carrying the one thing that could either save her or get her killed. Comment below, what would you do in Zara's shoes? Would you tell him the truth right there in the hallway, or would you keep denying it? Let me know in the comments. The drive to the estate was suffocating. The windows of the black armored SUV were tinted so dark that the vibrant afternoon sun of Seoul was reduced to a bruised, purple twilight. Zara sat pressed against the furthest door, her knees pulled to her chest, trembling not from cold, but from a terror that went bone deep. Joon-Ho sat on the other side of the leather bench seat. He hadn't said a word since he threw her into the car. He didn't need to. The air around him crackled with a violence that was barely contained. He was staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle feathered in his cheek. His hand, the one with the heavy gold signet ring, rested on his knee, tapping a slow, rhythmic beat that sounded like a countdown. Zara risked a glance at him. Up close, without the chaos of the hospital hallway, he was even more terrifying. He was beautiful, in a way a natural disaster is beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, heavy brows, and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But it was the energy rolling off him that choked her, a mix of betrayal and possessive rage. "Where are you taking me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. He didn't look at her. "Home. I have a home," she said, trying to summon a scrap of bravery. "I have a shift. If I don't go back, they'll call the police." Joon-Ho finally turned. His eyes were cold, dead things. "I own the police, doctor. And as of 10 minutes ago, I own the hospital board. No one is coming for you. You ceased to exist the moment you stepped into this car." Tears pricked her eyes again, hot and frustrating. She hated crying. She had survived medical school on instant noodles and 3 hours of sleep. She was tough. But this was a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Why are you doing this? She pleaded. Is it the money? I can pay you back. It might take years, but it'll pay back every cent of the debt you bought. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. You think this is about money? He leaned across the seat, encroaching on her space until she was pressed flat against the glass. He reached out, his hand hovering over her stomach. He didn't touch her, but the heat of his palm radiated through her scrubs. You stole something from me that is worth more than your entire life. I didn't steal anything. You stole my heir, he snarled. And you tried to run. I didn't know. She shouted back, fear giving way to a spark of anger. I didn't know who you were. I didn't ask for any of this. You're the one who dragged me into a basement and then. She couldn't finish the sentence. The memory of that night, the heat, the way her body had betrayed her logic, was too shameful. The car slowed, turning onto a private road that wound up the side of a mountain overlooking the city. Gates made of wrought iron and steel swung open. They passed guards with assault rifles slung over their chests. This wasn't a house. It was a fortress. The car stopped in front of a sprawling modern mansion made of glass and black stone. Before the driver could even open the door, Joon-Ho was out. He came around to her side, ripping the door open. Out, he commanded. Zara hesitated. He reached in, grabbing her wrist, not painfully, but firmly, and pulled her out. He didn't drag her this time. He guided her, his hand moving to the small of her back. It felt like a brand. He marched her up the stone steps, past bowing servants who didn't dare lift their eyes, and into a foyer that was bigger than her entire apartment building. Take her to the master suite, Joon-Ho barked at an older woman in a severe gray uniform. Lock the door. She speaks to no one. She sees no one but me. Yes, master, the woman bowed low. Wait. Zara dug her heels into the marble floor. Joon-Ho, please. You can't just lock me up. I'm a human being, I'm a doctor. He stopped, turning to look at her one last time before storming toward his study. You are not a doctor anymore, he said, his voice flat. No, you are just the vessel carrying my blood. Do not test me, Zara. For the child's sake, do not make me be the monster you think I am. He walked away. The heavy wooden doors of his office slammed shut, echoing through the silent house like a gunshot. Zara was led up a floating staircase, down a long corridor lined with priceless art she couldn't focus on, and pushed into a room at the end of the hall. The door clicked shut. She heard the distinct, mechanical slide of a heavy lock engaging. She was trapped. She rushed to the door, pounding on it with her fists. Let me out. You can't do this. Help. Silence. She slumped against the wood, sliding to the floor. She wrapped her arms around her knees and finally, fully, broke down. She cried for her lost career. She cried for the freedom she had fought so hard for as an immigrant student. And she cried for the baby growing inside her, a baby already born into a cage. Hours passed. The sun set, casting long, bloody shadows across the room. Zara finally stood up and looked around. The room was obscene in its luxury. A king-size bed with silk sheets, a balcony overlooking the glittering skyline of Seoul, a bathroom with a tub carved from a single piece of stone. It was a golden cage, but a cage nonetheless. She walked to the balcony doors. Locked. Reinforced glass. She was in a high-rise fortress. There was no way down. Around midnight, the lock on the bedroom door clicked. Zara scrambled back, grabbing a heavy crystal vase from the bedside table. She held it like a club, her breathing ragged. The door opened. Joon-Ho walked in. He had changed. The trench coat was gone. He was wearing black dress trousers and a white dress shirt, the top buttons undone, sleeves rolled up to reveal the tattoos winding down his forearms. He held a glass of amber liquid in one hand. He looked exhausted, the rage from earlier simmering down into a cold, hard resolve. He saw the vase in her hand. He didn't even flinch. He just closed the door behind him and locked it again. Put it down, he said calmly, walking toward the small sitting area by the window. You have terrible form. You would break your own wrist before you hurt me. Stay back, Zara warned, her voice shaking. I know anatomy. I know where the carotid artery is. I will hurt you if you touch me. Joon-Ho stopped. He looked at her, really looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. It was almost amused? No, not amused. Impressed. You have fire, he murmured, taking a sip of his drink. Good. The child will need fire to survive in this family. This isn't a family, she spat. This is a prison. It is a sanctuary, he corrected. Out there, you are vulnerable. Here, you are untouchable. I was fine before you showed up. Were you? He set the glass down and took a step toward her. You were starving, Zara. I saw your bank records. You were skipping meals to pay tuition. You were working in a sewer of a clinic to make ends meet. Is that safety? It was freedom. She yelled. It was my life. He lunged. It was so fast she gasped. He grabbed the wrist holding the vase and twisted it effortlessly. The crystal crashed to the carpet with a dull thud. He spun her around, pinning her back against the wall, his body pressing into hers. It was a pathetic life, he growled into her ear. And now it is over. Get off me. She struggled, pushing against his chest. Tell me, he demanded, his voice dropping to a whisper that vibrated through her ribs. Did you enjoy it? Playing the innocent student by day and the gangster's whore by night? Is that how you got pregnant? Did you sleep with the next man who walked into that clinic? Or the one after that? The accusation hit her harder than a physical blow. The air left her lungs. He thought she was a pro. He thought the night they shared was just one of many. He thought she was cheap. Something inside Zara snapped. The fear evaporated, replaced by a white-hot indignation. She stopped struggling. She went rigid. She looked up, meeting his black eyes with a glare that could cut glass. I was a virgin. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Joon-Ho froze. His hand, which had been gripping her shoulder, went slack. He blinked, the cruel sneer faltering for the first time. What? I was a virgin, Zara repeated, her voice trembling with the weight of the confession. Tears spilled over her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. That night, in the clinic, you were the first. The only. Joon-Ho stared at her. He searched her face, looking for the lie. He looked for the deception he was so used to finding in his world. But all he saw was raw, bleeding honesty. He stepped back as if he had been burned. You are lying, he whispered, but there was no conviction in his voice. I wish I was, she sobbed, sliding down the wall as her legs gave out. I saved myself for years. I wanted it to mean something. I wanted it to be with someone who loved me. Instead, I got a bleeding gangster who paid me and left. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with hate. You ruined me, Joon-Ho. You took the only thing I had left to give, and you treated it like a transaction. And now you dare to call me a whore? The silence in the room was deafening. Joon-Ho stood frozen in the center of the room. His world was tilting on its axis. In the Jeomryong, women were commodities. Innocence was a myth. He had assumed. He had been so sure. He looked at his hands, the hands that had touched her so roughly that night, the hands that had just pinned her against the wall. He had taken a virgin, a woman who had saved his life, and he had left her alone, pregnant and terrified. A look of absolute horror crossed his face. It was followed quickly by something darker, something heavier. Guilt. And beneath the guilt, a terrifying realization of ownership. If he was her first, if he was the only one, then she belonged to him in a way that went beyond debt or power. In his twisted, archaic code of honor, he was now responsible for her soul. He dropped to his knees in front of her. Zara flinched, curling into a ball. Don't touch me. He hovered his hands over her, unsure of what to do. The ruthlessness was gone, replaced by a frantic, awkward hesitation. Zara, he said, his voice unrecognizable. It was soft. Broken. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't ask. She cried. You didn't care. He swallowed hard. He reached out, very slowly, and touched her knee. When she didn't kick him away, he slid his hand up to her arm. I didn't know. It doesn't matter, she wept into her knees. Just let me go. No. The word was instant. Automatic. He moved closer, invading her space again, but this time the aggression was gone. He wrapped his arms around her stiff body, pulling her into his chest. She resisted, pushing at him, but he was like a stone statue. He buried his face in her neck, breathing in her scent. No, he repeated, his voice vibrating against her skin. I can never let you go now. You are mine. Completely. I was the first, and I will be the last. That's not romantic. She screamed, hitting his chest. That's sick. It is the truth, he murmured, tightening his grip. He wasn't listening to her protests anymore. His mind was rewriting his entire reality. The baby wasn't just an heir anymore. It was a miracle. And Zara wasn't just a vessel. She was a sacred thing he had desecrated, and now he had to spend the rest of his life guarding her to make up for it. I will kill anyone who looks at you, he vowed against her hair, the obsession taking root deep in his blackened heart. I will burn the city before I let you cry again. I'm crying because of you. I know, he said soothingly, rocking her slightly as if she were already the child. I know. I will fix it. I will give you everything. You want the moon? I will buy it. You want the hospital? It is yours. But you stay here. With me. Where you are safe. Zara realized with a sinking heart that the truth hadn't set her free. It had just locked the door tighter. Before, he wanted the baby. Now, he wanted her. And a man like Joon-Ho didn't know how to love. He only knew how to possess. Before we continue to the next twist in this dark tale, if you're hooked on this story, please take a second to like this video. It helps us create more stories like this for you. And tell me in the comments, do you think Joon-Ho deserves a chance at redemption, or is he too far gone? The next morning, Zara woke up to the smell of food. Rich, savory, comforting smells that made her empty stomach growl before she even opened her eyes. For a split second, she thought she was back in her cramped apartment. Then she felt the silk sheets. She saw the vaulted ceiling. And she remembered. She shot up in bed. The bedroom door was open. She scrambled out of bed, her heart racing. Was it unlocked? Did he leave it open by mistake? She ran to the doorway and stopped dead. Joon-Ho was sitting in a chair right outside the door in the hallway. He was dressed in a fresh suit, crisp and sharp, reading a tablet. A tray of food sat on a small table next to him. Steaming rice, grilled fish, seaweed soup, and was that scrambled eggs and bacon? A weird mix of traditional Korean breakfast and Western comfort food. He looked up as she appeared. His eyes were tired, red-rimmed. He hadn't slept. He had been guarding her door all night. Good morning, he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes tracked her every movement. You sat there all night? She asked, bewildered. I told you, he said, standing up and picking up the tray. I trust no one. If you need anything, you ask me. Only me. He walked past her into the bedroom, setting the tray on the bed. Eat. The baby needs nutrients. The doctor said you are anemic. Which doctor? Zara asked, eyeing the food suspiciously. I haven't seen a doctor. I read your file, he said, pouring a glass of water. I read every chart, every blood test from your checkups at the hospital. I know everything now. He turned to her, holding out the glass of water. Sit. Eat. Zara didn't move. I'm not hungry. Zara, he warned, his tone dipping into that dangerous register again. Do not fight me on this. Starve yourself if you want to be stubborn, but you will not starve my child. She glared at him, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud rumble. Defeated, she walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. She took the water. Good, he said, watching her drink. He looked satisfied, like a predator watching its pet eat. So what happens now? She asked, putting the glass down. I just sit here for 6 months until I give birth? And then what? You take the baby and throw me out? Joon-Ho went still. He walked over to the window, looking out at the sprawling estate grounds. No, he said quietly. You do not leave. Not ever. That's kidnapping, Joon-Ho. You can't keep me here forever. He turned, and the look in his eyes chilled her to the bone. It wasn't anger. It was a calm, terrifying certainty. You are my family now, he said. You think you can just walk away? After what I took from you? No. You are the mother of the dragon's heir. You are the only woman who has ever. He stopped, looking away. You stay. We will be a family. I will learn to be. Whatever it is you need. I need my freedom, she shot back. Ask for something else, he said instantly. I want to work. I'm a doctor. I can't just sit here. He considered this. He looked at her hands, those steady, capable hands that had saved his life. Fine, he said. Zara blinked. Fine. I can go back to the hospital? No, he scoffed. The hospital is full of men. Germs. Enemies. You will not step foot in that place. Then how? I will bring the hospital to you, he declared. There is a guest wing in the East building. I will have it gutted. I will buy the best equipment in Korea. You can have your clinic, Zara. You can treat patients. But only women. And only under my guard. Zara stared at him. He was insane. He was actually insane. He thought he could just build a hospital in his house to keep her happy? You're crazy, she whispered. I am a man who protects what is his, he corrected. He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. Eat. Then get dressed. The tailor is coming at noon. The tailor? Your clothes. He gestured to her rumpled scrubs. They are offensive. You are the mistress of this house now. You will dress like a queen. He walked out, leaving the door open this time. But as Zara looked into the hallway, she saw two massive guards stepping into view, blocking the exit. The cage had just gotten bigger, and a lot more expensive. But the bars were stronger than ever. How do you feel about Joon-Ho's reaction? Is he trying to be good in his own twisted way, or is he just controlling? Let's discuss in the comments below. The weeks bled into months, turning the sprawling fortress of the Jeomryong estate into a strange, suspended reality for Zara. The seasons changed outside the reinforced glass windows, from the lush green of late summer to the fiery red of Korean autumn. But inside, time was measured only by the growing curve of her belly and the terrifying, silent intensity of the man who watched her every move. Joon-Ho kept his word. He was a monster, yes, but he was a monster of his word. The east wing of the estate had been gutted and rebuilt in record time. What used to be a ballroom was now a state-of-the-art medical clinic that rivaled the VIP suites at Seoul National. It smelled of antiseptic and fresh paint. It had an ultrasound machine that cost more than Zara's childhood home, rows of gleaming surgical tools, and a pharmacy stocked with everything from prenatal vitamins to morphine. But it was empty. Zara stood in the center of her private kingdom, running her hand over the cold steel of an examination table. She was 6 months pregnant now. Her movements were slower, her back ached constantly, and the custom-made maternity dresses Joon-Ho forced her to wear, silks and cashmeres in deep jewel tones, felt heavy against her skin. The door swished open. Zara didn't turn. She knew the sound of those footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Possessive. You are not working. Joon-Ho's voice filled the sterile room. I have no patience, Zara said, turning to face him. You built me a hospital, Joon-Ho, but you won't let anyone in it. Joon-Ho stood in the doorway, filling the frame. He wore a charcoal suit, the jacket discarded somewhere, his white shirt strained across his shoulders. He looked tired. The circles under his eyes were darker these days. The war for the city was taking its toll, though he never spoke of it to her. I brought you a patient, he said, stepping aside. Behind him, a terrified young woman shuffled in. She was wearing a maid's uniform, clutching her hand, which was wrapped in a bloody kitchen towel. A massive guard stood behind her, looking out of place in the medical setting. Hannah cut her hand slicing fruit, Joon-Ho explained, his tone bored but his eyes sharp. Stitch it. Zara's heart leaped, not with joy, but with a desperate need for purpose. She rushed forward, guiding the frightened girl to the chair. Let me see. It's okay, Hannah. I've got you. For 20 minutes, Zara wasn't a prisoner. She was Dr. Williams. She cleaned the wound, numbed the area with a gentle touch that made the girl stop crying, and sutured the laceration with precise, neat stitches. Joon-Ho watched from the corner. He didn't look at the maid. He looked only at Zara. He watched the way her face transformed when she worked, how the fear and sadness vanished, replaced by a calm, glowing competence. He watched her hands, those beautiful, healing hands, and a look of profound, agonizing hunger crossed his face. All done, Zara said softly, bandaging the hand. Keep it dry for 3 days. Come back to me if it throbs. The maid bowed frantically to Zara, then even lower to Joon-Ho, before fleeing the room as if escaping a dragon's den. The silence returned. You are talented, Joon-Ho said. It was the first compliment he had given her that wasn't about the baby. I studied hard to be talented, Zara replied, washing her hands at the sink. She looked at him in the mirror. Why are you really here, Joon-Ho? It's 2 p.m. You're usually meetings with your captains. I wanted to hear the heartbeat, he said. Zara froze, the water running over her hands. He walked over to her, turning off the tap with a reach that caged her against the sink. He didn't touch her, but his heat radiated into her back. The scan. Do it. Zara dried her hands and moved to the ultrasound machine. She lay down on the bed, pulling her dress up to expose her round stomach. She squirted the cold gel onto her skin. Joon-Ho pulled a stool right up to the bedside. He sat close. Too close. He stared at the monitor with an intensity that would have terrified a lesser woman. Zara moved the wand. A moment later, the rhythmic, galloping whoosh 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 of the baby's heart filled the room. The sound changed him. The hard lines of Joon-Ho's face softened. The ruthless Mafia Don vanished, replaced by a man witnessing a miracle he didn't believe he deserved. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and touched the screen, tracing the ghostly black and white outline of the fetus. "Strong," he whispered. "Like iron." "He kicks," Zara said quietly. The anger she held onto like a shield slipped, just for a moment. It was hard to hate him when he looked at their child like that. "He kicks all night. He doesn't let me sleep." Joon-Ho looked from the screen to her stomach. "May I?" he asked. He actually asked. Zara hesitated, then nodded. Joon-Ho placed his large, calloused hand on her bare skin. His palm was hot. He waited. A few seconds passed, and then thump. A strong kick right against his palm. Joon-Ho gasped. A genuine, shocked sound. His eyes snapped to hers, wide with wonder. "He knows me." "He doesn't know you," Zara said, trying to keep her voice firm but failing. "He just reacts to the heat." "No," Joon-Ho insisted, a small, rare smile touching his lips. It made him look 10 years younger. "He knows his father. He knows who protects him." He leaned in, his face inches from her stomach. He murmured something in Korean, too low for her to catch, but the tone was a vow. A promise of blood and fire to keep this little life safe. Then he looked up at Zara. Their faces were so close she could see the gold flecks in his dark irises. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with that same volatile electricity that had started this whole mess in the basement clinic. He leaned in. Zara's breath hitched. She didn't pull away. She should have. She should have screamed. But the isolation, the hormones, the confusing, twisted intimacy of their situation held her paralyzed. His lips brushed her forehead. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of reverence. "Thank you," he breathed against her skin. "For keeping him safe." He pulled back before she could respond, the mask of the dawn sliding back into place. "I have to leave tonight. Business in Incheon. I will be gone for 2 days." Panic flared in Zara's chest. She hated him, but she had come to realize a terrifying truth. In this house, he was the only thing standing between her and the wolves. "You're leaving?" "I have to. There are unrests. Rivals who think I have gone soft because I haven't been seen in the clubs." He stood up, adjusting his cuffs. "I have doubled the guard. Lieutenant Min will be outside your door. He is my right hand. He would die before letting anyone touch you." "Joon-Ho," she called out as he reached the door. He stopped, turning back. "Be careful," she whispered. The words tasted like ash, but they were true. If he died, she and the baby were as good as dead. He stared at her, a flicker of emotion crossing his face. Surprise, maybe hope? He nodded once, sharply, and then he was gone. The estate felt different when he wasn't there. Without Joon-Ho's suffocating presence, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was predatory. Zara couldn't sleep. She paced her bedroom. She reorganized the nursery for the 100th time. Outside, the storm season was beginning again. Thunder rattled the reinforced glass. By the second night, the feeling of dread was so heavy Zara could taste it. She sat in the clinic, reading a medical journal, trying to distract herself. The lights flickered. Zara looked up. The power in the estate never flickered. Joon-Ho had backup generators for his backup generators. They flickered again. Then, with a definitive clunk, the clinic plunged into darkness. "Hello?" Zara called out, standing up. "Min. Is that the storm?" The emergency red lights hummed to life, bathing the room in a sinister, bloody glow. Silence. No answer from the hallway. Zara walked to the door. "Lieutenant Min?" She opened the door. The hallway was empty. The 2 massive guards who usually stood there like statues were gone. There was no sign of a struggle. No bodies. Just emptiness. A cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning swept over her. Joon-Ho had said Min would die before leaving his post. If Min wasn't there, it meant he hadn't died. It meant he had left. Betrayal. Zara realized it with a surgeon's clarity. The rival gangs didn't need to storm the gates. They just needed someone on the inside to open them. And Joon-Ho was in Incheon 2 hours away. Click. The sound came from the end of the corridor. The sound of a service elevator opening. Heavy boots on marble. Not the rhythmic, disciplined walk of Joon-Ho's men. This was a shuffle. A peck. Zara slammed the clinic door shut and locked it. It was a heavy medical-grade door, but it wouldn't hold a battering ram. She backed away, her hands flying to her stomach. She needed a weapon. She scanned the room. The ultrasound machine? Too heavy. The 4-pole? Too light. Her eyes landed on the surgical tray she had used for Hannah earlier. Scalpels. She grabbed a number 10 scalpel, her fingers wrapping around the cold steel handle. It was small, barely 3 inches of blade, but in the hands of someone who knew exactly where the jugular vein sat, it was deadly. "Come out, little doctor." A voice shouted from the hallway. It wasn't Min. It was a rough, mocking voice. "We know you're in there." The dragon left his treasure unguarded. A heavy body slammed against the door. The wood groaned. "Open up." Another slam. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want the bastard's spawn. We'll cut it out and leave you be." Zara gagged, bile rising in her throat. She retreated into the shadows of the room, behind the heavy MRI machine. She wouldn't let them take her baby. She would die first. Crash. The lock gave way. The door flew open. 3 men spilled into the red-lit room. They wore masks and carried machetes. Guns were too loud, too messy for a stealth job. They reeked of cheap alcohol and rain. "Where is she?" One hissed, swinging his blade, knocking over a tray of instruments. Clatter and steel rang out. "Check behind the machines." Zara held her breath. She squeezed the scalpel so hard her knuckles turned white. She calculated the distance. 3 men. She couldn't fight 3. She had to surprise one, get his weapon, or nothing. She was a pregnant woman against 3 killers. One of the men stepped closer to her hiding spot. She could see his boots. He stopped. He sniffed the air. "I smell her perfume," he chuckled. He lunged around the corner of the MRI machine. Zara didn't think. She reacted. She slashed upward. The blade caught him across the forearm. He screamed, dropping the machete. Zara scrambled back, but the other 2 were on her instantly. A rough hand grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. She screamed, slashing blindly with the scalpel, but a heavy fist connected with her jaw. Stars exploded in her vision. She tasted blood. "Feisty bitch." The man growled, pinning her against the wall. He pressed his forearm against her throat, choking her. "Holhelais. Get the baby." "No." Zara gurgled, clawing at his arm. "No. Please." The second man moved toward her, a long jagged knife in his hand. He looked at her stomach with a sick grin. This was it. This was how she died. Bang. The sound wasn't a gunshot. It was the sound of the entire front wall of the clinic, the reinforced glass window overlooking the balcony, shattering inward. Glass rained down like diamonds. A black shape swung through the broken window on a rappelling line, crashing into the room with the force of a wrecking ball. It was Joon-Ho, but not the Joon-Ho she knew. This was a demon. He was soaked in rain, his suit torn, his eyes glowing with a terrifying, inhuman rage. He hadn't driven back from Incheon. He had taken a helicopter. He had come through the storm. He landed in a crouch and rose in one fluid motion. The man holding the knife turned, stunned. The diarrhea. He didn't finish the word. Joon-Ho moved faster than thought. He crossed the room and grabbed the man by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. There was a sickening crunch, and he threw the body across the room like a rag doll. The man choking Zara let go, scrambling for his weapon. Joon-Ho stepped over the debris. He didn't even look at the attacker. He just swung his arm, a brutal, backhanded strike holding a gun he hadn't fired yet. The metal pistol whipped across the man's face, shattering bone. The man dropped. Joon-Ho stood amidst the carnage, chest heaving. He looked wild, terrifying. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on Zara. She was slumped against the wall, clutching her stomach, the bloody scalpel still in her hand. Her lip was split. Her cheek was bruising. Joon-Ho let out a sound that was half roar, half sob. He dropped his gun and fell to his knees, sliding across the glass-covered floor to get to her. Zara, he choked out, his hands hovering over her, afraid to touch her injuries. "Zara, look at me. The baby," she gasped, dropping the scalpel. They wanted." "I know," he said, his voice trembling with a fury so deep it shook the floorboards. "I know. I'm here. I've got you." He scooped her up into his arms, ignoring the glass cutting into his knees, ignoring the blood on his own clothes. He pulled her tight against his chest, shielding her from the sight of the bodies. Min, Zara whispered, burying her face in his wet shirt. Min wasn't there. I know, Joon-Ho said darkly. Min is dead. I killed him myself before I got on the chopper. He stood up, carrying her toward the door. The hallway was now filled with his loyal men, the ones who hadn't turned. They looked at their boss with fear. They had never seen him like this. Burn it, Joon-Ho commanded as he walked past them, his voice dead calm. Sir? A guard asked. The East Wing, Joon-Ho said, looking back at the clinic where his woman had almost died. Burn it down. And bring me the heads of the families who sent them. Tonight. All of them. He looked down at Zara, who was shivering in his arms. The rage in his eyes softened into a desperate, agonizing apology. I will never leave you again, he vowed, pressing a kiss to her bloody hair. I will burn the whole world down if I have to, but no one will ever touch you again. As he carried her through the darkened corridors of his fortress, Zara realized the terrifying truth. He wasn't just her captor anymore. He was her savior. And in the twisted, violent world he had dragged her into, she was starting to feel safer in the arms of the monster than she did anywhere else. Whoa, that was intense. Do you think Zara is developing Stockholm Syndrome, or is she just surviving? And what about that entrance by Joon-Ho? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like if your heart is racing. The fire from the East Wing was visible from the master bedroom window, a flickering orange glow reflecting against the stormy night sky. But inside the room, it was quiet. Joon-Ho had refused to let anyone else touch her. He had dismissed the nurses, the maids, everyone. He had carried Zara into the bathroom himself, setting her down on the marble vanity. His hands, usually so steady, shook as he wet a soft cloth with warm water. Does it hurt? He asked, his voice rough as sandpaper. He dabbed gently at the split on her lip. It stings, Zara whispered. She was still in shock, her body trembling intermittently. She watched him. His shirt was ruined, stained with rain and blood. Some of it his, some of it from the men he had killed. He looked wrecked. The invincible armor of the dragon had cracked, revealing a man terrified of what he had almost lost. I am sorry, he said. He didn't look at her. He focused intently on cleaning the cut on her cheek. I thought Min was loyal. He was with my father. He stopped, swallowing hard. I failed you. You came back, Zara said. It was simple, but it hung in the air between them. He dropped the cloth into the sink and braced his hands on the counter, hanging his head. I came back too late. They touched you. They put their hands on you. A shudder of revulsion went through him. If I had been 1 minute slower. But you weren't, Zara reached out. She hesitated, then placed her hand on his forearm. His muscles were rock hard, coiled with tension. Joon-Ho, look at me. He lifted his head. His eyes were black pits of anguish. Is the baby okay? She asked. He nodded. I felt him. When I picked you up. He was moving. Then we're okay. No, he said fiercely, gripping her hand. We are not okay. You are not safe. Not here. Not anywhere in this city. He pulled away, pacing the bathroom. I have to move you. But where? America? No, they have reached there. Europe? Too far. Joon-Ho stopped, Zara said, sliding off the vanity. Her legs were shaky, but she stood. Stop running. You can't run from this. I can kill it, he growled. I ordered the purge. By sunrise, the rival families will be ash. And then what? New ones will rise. That's the life you chose. She walked over to him, grabbing his face with both hands to make him stop pacing. You can't burn the world down, Joon-Ho. You have to live in it. We have to live in it. He covered her hands with his own, closing his eyes. He leaned his forehead against hers. For a long moment, they just breathed together. The violence of the night faded, leaving only this strange, undeniable tether between them. I love you, he whispered. The words were so quiet Zara almost missed them. She pulled back, staring at him. What? I love you, he said again, opening his eyes. They were clear now. Certain. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was guilt, or duty, or obsession. But tonight, when I saw that knife near you, I died, Zara. The man I was died. Joon-Ho. Zara's breath hitched. She didn't know what to say. She shouldn't love him. He was a criminal. He had kidnapped her. He was everything she was raised to hate. But he was also the man who had sat outside her door all night. The man who had learned English just to argue with her. The man who had just rappelled through a window into a storm to save her life. "You don't have to say it back," he said quickly, sensing her hesitation. "I know who I am. I know what I have done to you. But you need to know. You are not just a vessel. You are my life." He kissed her then. Not like the first time in the clinic, frantic and drugged. And not like the forehead kisses of the last few months, reverent and distant. This was desperate. It was a plea. It was a man offering his soul to the only thing that could save him. And this time Zara kissed him back. The epilogue, 2 months later. The delivery room was not in a hospital, and it wasn't in the burnout East Wing. It was in a private, fortified suite at the very top of the Latte World Tower, rented out completely by the GM Ryong. It was chaos. "Breathe, Zara. Breathe." Joon-Ho was pale. He looked more terrified than he had facing 3 armed assassins. He was holding her hand so hard she thought he might break it. "I am breathing." Zara screamed, bearing down as another contraction ripped through her. "Stop telling me what to do. I am the boss." He yelled back, panic making him irrational. "I give the orders. Not today, Satan." Zara roared, grabbing his tie and yanking him down. "Shut up and give me ice chips." The terrified obstetrician, the best in the country, paid triple his salary, looked between the screaming woman and the Mafia Don, wisely deciding to say nothing. "One more push, Zara," the doctor said. "I see the head." "Push, my love," Joon-Ho whispered, switching instantly from dictator to cheerleader. He wiped the sweat from her forehead with a silk handkerchief. "You are strong. You are a warrior. Do it." Zara grit her teeth, summoned every ounce of strength left in her body, and pushed. A cry filled the room. High, thin, and indignant. The tension in the room snapped. Zara collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing with relief. Joon-Ho froze. He looked at the doctor, who was holding up a small, squirming, bloody bundle. "It's a boy," the doctor announced. Joon-Ho didn't move. He stared at the baby. His son. The heir to an empire of blood and money. But in that moment, he didn't look like an heir. He looked tiny. Fragile. The doctor cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket, then handed him to Zara. "Hi," Zara whispered, touching the baby's cheek. He had dark fuzz on his head and Joon-Ho's nose. He opened his eyes, dark, unfocused eyes, and blinked. "Hi there, little dragon." "Joon-Ho," she said softly. He was standing by the window, his back to them. His shoulders were shaking. "Come here," she said. He turned. The dragon of Seoul, the man who made grown men wet themselves in fear, was crying. Silent tears tracked down his sharp face. He walked over to the bed as if approaching a holy shrine. "Hold him," Zara said, offering the bundle. I can't," he whispered, looking at his large hands. I have too much blood on me." "Wash it off," Zara said firmly. "You're his father. Take him." Joon-Ho reached out. He took the baby as if he were made of glass. He cradled him against his chest, awkward at first, then instinctively tucking the small head under his chin. The baby settled instantly. The crying stopped. Joon-Ho looked down at his son, and then at Zara. The look in his eyes was blinding. It was pure, unadulterated joy. "He is perfect," Joon-Ho choked out. "He is. You. He's us," Zara corrected. She reached out and took Joon-Ho's hand, pulling him down to sit on the edge of the bed. The 3 of them sat there in the golden light of the Seoul sunset. A family forged in violence, bound by secrets, and saved by a love that made no sense. "What do we name him?" Joon-Ho asked, not taking his eyes off the baby. "I was thinking," Zara smiled tiredly. "Maybe something that means peace. Because God knows this family needs it." Joon-Ho chuckled, leaning down to kiss her forehead, then the baby's head. "Peace is good. But he will need strength too. How about Taeyong?" "Sun." "Taeyong." Zara's tested it. "I like it. The sun that rises after the storm." Joon-Ho nodded. He looked out the window at the city below. The city he ruled. It was still dangerous. It was still dark. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the dark. Because he held the sun in his arms. "I promise you," he whispered to the sleeping infant. "The world is yours. And I will make sure it is worthy of you." He looked at Zara. "And you. You are my queen. Forever." Zara smiled, closing her eyes as sleep finally claimed her. She was a doctor, a mother, and now, the wife of a monster. It wasn't the life she had planned. It wasn't the fairy tale she had dreamed of. It was darker. It was bloodier. But as Joon-Ho's hand covered hers, warm and solid, she knew one thing for sure. It was hers. End of story. Wow. What a journey. From a basement clinic to the top of the world. Do you think Joon-Ho can really change, or will the mafia life always haunt them? If you enjoyed this video, please give this video a massive thumbs up. It really supports the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss a story. We have a new dark romance coming next week that you won't believe. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.